deal in town, and the teacher would have us, we kids, we would be practicing for some period of time before the big event. And the big event would be at night, and we didn't have any electricity, as I say again. And the fathers would bring lanterns, and they'd hang lanterns up from the ceiling to light up the school. And this was sort of awesome for us because we'd never, very seldom be at school at night. And to see the schoolroom lighted up was just something we couldn't quite grasp.
Yeah.
And the teacher would practice, and we would practice singing. And I remember very well one of the stories long ago with my cousin, Bobby Brooks, and I sang the song "Santa Claus is Coming to Town." And we had rehearsed it, and we knew all the words. And there was quite a crowd came. The people came from Canada that night to the concert, and the refreshments were served after the concert was over. And Bobby and I were singing along, and we'd forgotten at that point, we were very nervous because of all those people, and we'd forgotten most of the words to the song.
Oh, no.
And the teacher had to stand up and kind of sing along with us till we could pick it up again and finish the song. And somebody would play the organ, or we had what we called a Victrola, a graphophone that played records. And that was something that you're familiar with now, which would be a tape or a CD.
Oh.
But this was what they called a graphophone, full speed. And you would turn the switch, and the turntable would start to turn, and you would put the needle down on it. Be careful not to scratch the record. You would put the needle down on it, and through the amplifier would come the sound. And a couple of the records had Christmas carols on them without any words. So, like when Bobby and I got ready to sing, and we had a couple other songs, I heard the bells on Christmas Day. Did you ever hear that Christmas carol?
Yeah, yep.
I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play. I can remember the words of them.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool. So, that was, okay, those were...
We would sing along, the music would play on the Victrola.
Okay.
And we would sing along to the music.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
I thought of just a few more questions that aren't on that sheet. Well, my mom did. And could you tell me what year and what age were you? Did you break your leg, and how?
Well, I was 10 years old when I broke my leg. And I was riding with my friend who lived right beside me. He had his bike, and I was riding with him. And remember, the roads, they were not surface roads. The roads were all gravel. It's like our camp road, going into the camp road.
Oh, okay.
It was all gravel, and it was very loose gravel. And he and I were riding one night, and we were going down by the customs office and across the bridge over into Canada. And I went to turn around too fast, and my bicycle went out from under me, and I went in the air, and I landed, my left leg landed right on a rock that was sticking up in the road.
Ooh, that makes me shudder just thinking about it.
And at that point in my life, my leg was broken. And I was screaming in pain. And my friend Max Walls rode his bicycle as fast as he could back over to my parents' home and said that I had been hurt. And my father and mother came running. And one of the neighbors over there in Canada went in the house, and they got a big, heavy blanket. And they brought out the blanket, and 3 or 4 men picked me up and very carefully put me in the blanket. And the 3 or 4 men got a hold of different sides, corners of the blanket, and that's the way that's the way they carried me home, in the blanket. Because they couldn't, pick me up and put me in a car or anything like that. And so they put me in the blanket. Do you know what I mean by putting me in the blanket?
Yeah, I do. So then, what did you do then? Like, how did they fix your leg?
Well, then they get home, and my parents, they had one telephone in the town, and they called the station, the railroad station, where the telephone operator was, and they summoned a doctor from Danforth, Maine. And later that evening, a doctor came over, and he set my leg and put the bones back and so forth, and he rigged up a big cast for me to be in. It was called a plaster of Paris cast, and it went from the end of my big toe all the way on my foot, all the way my leg, all the way up to my stomach and around my stomach.
Wow.
And it was lined with cotton batting. And this was in May. This was in May when I broke my leg, and the summer was coming, and it was most uncomfortable, and it was very, very, very difficult. And all my little friends were spending the summer going swimming, and every time they went swimming, they'd all come into my house and visit with me and tell me that everything would be all right soon. And some of the big little books that I have referred to were brought to me and given to me by my friends when I was lying in bed with my broken leg.
Wow.
And in those days, Caroline, it's awfully hard for a girl like you in today's world to understand these things that I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Because in this little tiny town, no electricity, no plumbing facilities, or anything, and one of those big little books was a real treasure. You know, kids today don't know anything about the pleasure of getting a little booklet like that when you're little or something, you know.
Yeah.
And anyway, my leg, after that period, I lost a good year of school because the thing, my leg healed all right. They took off the cast, but it had slipped by, and it was not right. It had gotten all better, and my parents had to take me to the big hospital in the big world down in Bangor, Maine. It would be like your mom today taking you to New York City to have surgery on your leg.
Oh, wow, that's a big deal.
and your mom staying in New York City with you for 2 or 3 days after you had your surgery, and they took you back to your room at the huge hospital in New York, and your mom coming back to Topsfield, Mass.
You were there by yourself?
And you would be right there in New York City all alone by yourself, Caroline Ball, on the 10th floor of the hospital somewhere.
That must have been kind of scary.
And that's exactly what it was in my case. Bangor, Maine, to a person like me in those days, would be like you're going to New York City today.
Okay. Yep.
That's how I broke my leg, and then subsequently, when I went to the hospital there, my leg, I had to have surgery. My leg was rebroken in the operating room, and it was reset in the correct way that it was supposed to be reset, and that took me a whole year to recover from that.
Wow. Wasn't there a story of like some family that you stayed with or something like that?
Yes, and subsequent to that, my leg got all better, healed good, but it was completely stiff. I could not bend my knee. My leg was just as stiff as a board, just straight. And my family had friends, longtime friends, that they had known for years that lived in New Jersey, and they were quite affluent people. And they liked me a lot, and I liked them. And on 2 or 3 successive summers, they came on vacation to Forest City, stayed at my grandmother's house, And I went back with them to New Jersey, and I went to an orthopedic hospital 3 times a week, and they worked on my leg and finally got my leg so that it was loose enough and I could bend my leg, and my leg to this day, after 75 years, has never been completely the way the other leg has been. It has always bothered me all through high school and the military, all those years in the service, and the years in college, and all these years since. And this was the same leg that 3 years ago here in Florida was so bad that I had to have a hip replacement.
Oh.
In that leg, 3 years ago here in Florida, I had to have surgery and have a new hip put in my leg. This is the leg that I'm talking about that I broke all those years ago. So it was a kind of a dark spot in my life, and that broken leg business, you know.
Yeah. Next question. Why did you leave Forest City at age 13, and with who?
Well, I left Forest City at age 13 because that was the second year of World War II. And all of the able-bodied men, all of the able-bodied male and or female adults, as a patriotic thing, was to go someplace to work at the war effort. One family went to Spokane, Washington, and they worked at the Boeing airplane factory, making airplanes and fighter jets and so forth for the war. Other people went different places. We had one of the families that we were very close to. We grew up together, and the two sisters in school together. They went to Hartford, Connecticut. And in Hartford, Connecticut was Pratt & Whitney plant that made airplane engines. And to this day, Pratt & Whitney is very famous for making airplane engines. And my parents chose to go to Bath, Maine. My dad knew several people from Brookton and Danforth area that had gone down to Bath, Maine to work in the Bath Iron Works, a shipyard that built fantastic Navy ships to fight in the war, called destroyers. And my father went down there, and he worked for 1 year
like the ones we saw
down at Bath in 1942. And my mother and I and my sister Joan, we stayed in Forest City, and I finished my 8th grade at the one-room school, and my sister Joan I think she finished the 3rd grade that year. And in June of that year, when school was finished, my father came from Bath and picked up the family, and we all went to Bath, Maine.
Oh.
And forever after that kind of became our home. But I loved Forest City, and I did not want to go. And my father took my mother and my sister, and they went to Bath. My father had rented a home there, and I stayed in Forest City with my grandmother.
Oh.
And I had a wonderful summer with her. We loved each other very much. And I waited on her, and she waited on me. And we had those beautiful summer evenings sitting on her porch at her home.